I'm Dr. Anjana Khatwa. I'm an earth scientist, a presenter and a specialist in developing sustainable learning and engagement programs. I'm absolutely delighted to be part of Girls Into Geosciences this year. As an earth scientist, I'm passionate about bringing stories concerned with rocks, fossils and landforms to audiences of all ages and backgrounds. But where did this all begin? Where did my career in science start? When I was about 8 years old, I was desperate to be a scientist, in fact work in space science if I'm being more exact. I was desperate to work for NASA as an astronaut and explore planets all over the solar system. Who doesn't want that dream when they're 8 years old? But it was when I was 12 years old that I suddenly made that leap into really becoming interested in rocks, fossils and landforms. It was on a holiday travelling from Nairobi to Mombasa in Kenya where I first really discovered my love for geology. My family stopped off at an ancient lava flow, and as I walked over these sharp, craggy rocks, I couldn't help but wonder that if those rocks really were molten rock, lava flowing across the land surface, my feet would have melted into that heaving mass. It was that moment that I realised that this was such an extraordinary story, that the world could shift and change, and that rocks are a record of that history. When I went back to school, I then got really passionate about geography. I then went on to study A-levels, and one of them was geography, but I absolutely fell in love with physical geography. I went to university and I studied for a degree in earth science at Kingston University, and then I went on to study for a PhD at Southampton University, specialising in glacial geology and deformation mechanics. Now this sounds like a really easy journey the way I just tell it in about 3 minutes, but it wasn't. I had to overcome huge obstacles. One of those obstacles was my culture. As an Asian girl growing up in a traditional Asian family, there were certain expectations of what I should be when I grew up. My family expected me to have an arranged marriage and become a wife to somebody and support my husband, raise children, become a homemaker. But that wasn't for me. I didn't feel like that was my life's journey. And it would become a situation that would cause a great rift between us. For many Asian and black young women, going into the geosciences isn't something you first think of. My family in particular wanted me to pursue other options that were more familiar to them. So not only did I have to fight very hard to go to university to study this subject that I love so much, I also had to work really hard to convince them that this subject would give me a career. It would reward me in ways that I wouldn't expect. In the end, my sister and I were the first women in our family to go to university. And I felt so proud because I felt that once I got my family to understand the value of girls being educated, it would open the doors for other girls in our community to go and pursue a higher education degree. However, when it came to my PhD, that's when the rift really started. My family couldn't understand it. They couldn't understand why I would want to educate myself further in a subject that they really struggled to understand the relevance of. Not only that, but I was subject to a great deal of misogyny. My father once said to me as I was embarking on applying for PhDs, he said, "Who would want to marry a girl, a woman who was cleverer than her own husband?" And it was that attitude that really filled me with a greater need to achieve what I wanted to do. I went to the University of Southampton and studied for my PhD with a fantastic team of supervisors, Professor Tony Payne and Professor Jane Hart. And through my PhD, I picked up a huge amount of skills that I use today. My self-motivation, my self-belief, my analytical mind, my commitment to detail, these are all really specialist skills that I picked up during my PhD. And even though I don't work in glaciology anymore, I still use all of those skills in my career today. Once I completed my PhD at the University of Southampton, I then went to the United States for my postdoctoral work. I spent 1 year with Dr. Slavek Tularczyk at the University of California in Santa Cruz, studying the West Antarctic ice sheet. When that came to an end, I briefly returned to the UK to work at the University of Sheffield on a Brit Ice project, and this was mapping glacial deposits all over the United Kingdom to create a brand new map. that showed the extent of the last ice age. When that finished, I hopped back over the pond, back to the US, to complete an internship with the US National Park Service. It was actually part of a program called Geoscientist in the Park, where academic researchers like myself could be embedded in national park teams to assist with research that would help in the conservation of protected lands. As part of this internship, I had to actually engage with the public. And at first, this was absolutely terrifying. I'd spent most of my career as a researcher hidden in labs or going on fieldwork, not really doing any kind of public outreach at all. And then with the National Park Service, I had to wear a uniform and talk to people on trails and engage children with the work that I was doing as a researcher. I have to say, that experience was the making of me. It's why I'm able to talk to you in this video today. I learned incredible skills from the National Park Service. I learned how to communicate in a way that engages audiences. I gained a passion for telling stories. It's just an amazing experience if you can get it to work in organisations like that, so you can pick up skills from others who are willing to teach you. I stayed in the US for 4 years, and when I returned to the United Kingdom, it was for a job as the education coordinator with the Jurassic Coast World Heritage Site team. Here I was tasked to build a sustainable education programme for this extraordinary World Heritage Site that recorded 185 million years of Earth's history in just 95 miles of coast. Over the course of my 15-year career, I have had the privilege of working with thousands and thousands of teachers, inspiring them about how to bring earth sciences and geography effectively into their classroom. I fell in love with the Mesozoic, this beautiful coastline that has 100 million stories to tell about rocks, fossils and landforms. It really was a great privilege to work there and to be able to share my love for geology and geography with huge audiences, nationally and internationally. If you're wondering what happened with my family situation, actually it all worked out. It was a simple case of sitting down and talking to each other, understanding how we felt and working things through. Now my parents couldn't be happier with the choices that I've made. They're really proud of me, although they don't really quite understand my passion about rocks. That still puzzles them. But then some things you can never change. As for my family life, I'm a mum. I've got 3 children and I couldn't be happier. My life is busy and I involve my children in some of the work that I do. Sometimes they love it, sometimes they're annoyed, but at the end of the day, we're all really happy and we have a passion for what we individually love to do, whether that's football, rocks or science. So coming back to the topic of our talk, how to talk about rocks and influence people, I really want to share with you some of the skills that I've learned over the years about how you can become an influencer, how you can basically help other people around you love what you love. Now, you won't believe this if I tell you, but I actually envy all of you young people who are so connected to the modern day technologies that really quite elude people like me in my age group. Applications such as TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all of these technologies are essential for getting messages out to audiences. And it's something that I am still trying to learn, especially TikTok. But what I do know is how to package the information up so it reaches the audience in a way that resonates with them. And this is a little bit of information that I want to give you in case you want to develop some of your own social media content to engage new people in your own interests concerning geosciences and geography. I've found as a presenter on television and on YouTube that it's really difficult to engage people with geology, with geosciences and with geography. It's a difficult subject because it requires a great amount of imagination to take your mind back hundreds of millions of years to an environment that doesn't exist anymore. A great part of successful science communication is to bring your passion to the subject, to give that sense of awe and wonder to your audience so they feel like they're coming on the journey with you. Within that narrative, you have to cleverly build in all sorts of tricks and techniques that keeps that audience posted, hanging on your every word. So how do you do this? The key thing is understanding your audience. In my case, a lot of my YouTube content is targeting a family audience. So a lot of the messages that I use, the words, the language, it's not jargon, it's scientific, it's not dumbed down. You must go to where your audience is, watch what they watch, listen to what they listen to, and by doing that, you kind of understand how to tailor your own content. If you want to attract an audience that's aimed at primary school children in your content, you have to go to see what those children are watching. And trust me, I have watched a lot of CBBS and a lot of YouTube content aimed towards that audience. If you want to target an audience that's around 10 to 14 years old, you have to go and watch videos on TikTok. And this is what I've done. I really have watched hours of video content on TikTok to really understand the magic formula. And once I understand that magic formula, I can then apply it to my content, which is geology, geography, the geosciences, and then I can turn it into something that appeals to who's watching it. Last year, I published a paper explaining how different types of audiences learn, the type of content they engage with. I found that family audiences tend to engage in content that is either educational or entertainment value. If you're hoping to create content that entertains a family audience, there are 3 simple objectives that you need to put into whatever you're creating. The content needs to be multi-layered. It needs to appeal to children and adults. It needs to be playful and fun, but also it needs to be intellectually stimulating. If you want to create content that has a slight element of education to it, then you need to add a little bit more. You need to have extraordinary facts that wow the audience. For geology, it's also important to have engaging analogues that relate the past to environments of the present, so the audience can make that connection easily. Our family audiences also crave unexpected details. They want to know about things they didn't know about before. And this basically hooks them into your science. So let's test this out. Let me show you how you can talk about rocks and influence people. Welcome to this very special place. We're in a deep sea underworld that dates back almost 200 million years ago to the Jurassic period. This is what the UK was like hundreds of millions of years ago. Now, of course, these seas were full of incredible marine reptiles like plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs. But I want you to focus on the ammonites just for one moment. And that's because I'm holding one in my hand. This is a fossilised ammonite that I found at Charmouth Beach a few years ago. What's really fascinating about it is here in the corner, which you can just see, some of the ammonite shell has been chipped away, and it's actually a bite mark. It's a V-shaped bite mark, and from that we can tell that this ammonite was actually attacked by another creature, most likely a belemnite. Now, belemnites would have attached themselves onto the shell of these creatures, broken through the hard shell, and then sucked out the soft body of the creature inside, a bit like a milkshake through a straw. It really is rather disgusting. But that's the story of how this poor ammonite died. So hopefully in that short film, you can see how I've broken down for you how you might create content that would directly appeal to an audience that you want to engage. And in that particular example, it was a family audience. As a presenter, I am constantly thinking of new ideas that I can bring to the screen, whether it's a small screen on YouTube or whether I'm pitching to channel commissioners. To do this, you've got to read, you've got to follow the scientists on social media, and you've just got to look around you to be inspired by what you can see about the stories that you want to tell. Fossils, rocks and landscapes all have hidden stories there, patiently waiting to be uncovered. During the lockdown period, I realised a dream of mine that I'd been holding in my head for almost 8 years. It was a series called Where on Earth Do You Live? And I'd pitched it many times to all sorts of channel commissioners and production companies, failing to get anybody to notice how cool geology was. When the lockdown happened, I took the initiative to create the series myself. Where on Earth Do You Live is a series that explores the hidden mysteries locked into the rocks that are hidden under your feet where you live. If you watch the series on YouTube, you'll be able to start to pick apart how I've used my learning theory to help me design the content that I produce in the videos. Creating this series has really shown me how you can bring theory into practice, and the series has done really well. It's popularised geology for quite a wide audience, not just on social media, but beyond where people have shared it. Now I'm handing the challenge to you, all of you who are the technological innovators, all of you who have the finger on the pulse of what's happening in social media right now. Take your interest, take your passion for this incredible subject and turn it into something, a piece of content that can inspire all sorts of people through the channels that you enjoy talking through. Now, in the midst of a climate emergency, it's even more important that we learn from the ancient past and what it can teach us about what might happen in the future. I encourage you to think about how you might talk to people around you, whether it's online or whether it's to your family and friends, about this incredible subject. Use my tips, use my hints, connect with me, and let's join together to generate a huge conversation about how brilliant this subject is.